Hey there, my internet buddy. You just made my corner of the web a little brighter. If this is your first visit, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and send this video to someone who needs a smile. Also, where are you watching from? I read your comments with popcorn in hand. Let's jump right in. When my wife of 5 years sat me down and asked if she could sleep with her CrossFit trainer, I didn't explode with anger. I got inventive. She framed it as a bold step toward honesty and a more open marriage, all while quietly planning a lavish weekend retreat with her new flame. Big mistake. Instead of refusing outright, I designed the perfect plan to turn their dream getaway into pure chaos. By the end, they discovered the hard way that karma has a wicked sense of humor, and revenge tastes best when served with style. You know what's worse than finding out your wife's cheating? Having her ask for your approval first. Yeah, let that sink in. Let me walk you through what might have been the most surreal Wednesday night of my life. My name's Aaron Thompson. I'm 34. Until last week, I thought I had life pretty much figured out. I run a successful auto repair shop in Phoenix, own a decent house in a respectable neighborhood, and had been married to Rebecca for 5 years. Notice I said had? There's a reason for that. I was finishing up paperwork in my home office when Rebecca walked in, holding 2 glasses of wine. Usually when she brings me wine on a random weekday, it means one of 2 things. Either something amazing just happened, or something terrible. This time it was neither. This time, it was something completely unhinged. "We need to talk," she said, placing the glasses down. I nodded, half expecting she was finally ready to discuss the vintage Mustang project I'd been hinting at for months. Instead, she dropped a bomb so massive it made a nuclear blast look like a candle flicker. "Aaron, I want to start seeing other people, but I still want to stay married to you." I nearly choked on my wine. "Say that again?" "There's this guy at my CrossFit gym," she continued. "Matthew. We've been talking a lot. Nothing physical yet, but I want it to happen, and I wanted to be upfront about it." The craziest part? She said it like she was suggesting we try a new restaurant. Calm, casual, like she wasn't detonating the foundation of our marriage. "Let me get this straight," I said, carefully setting my glass down before I crushed it in my hand. "You're asking for permission to sleep with your gym buddy and still stay married to me?" "It's not just about sex," Rebecca said, as if that made anything better. "Matthew and we have a connection, but I love you too. I don't want to lose what we have. I thought if we were honest, we could make it work." I laughed. I couldn't help it. The absurdity felt like I'd been dropped into some twisted reality show. "And exactly how did you picture this working out?" I asked. "Well," she murmured, suddenly fascinated by her wine glass. "Matthew and I were thinking about taking a trip this weekend, to Sedona, just to see how things feel." That's when it clicked. She'd already planned everything. This wasn't an emotional confession. It was basically a scheduling notice, like she was informing me the office coffee brand was changing. "Have you completely lost your mind?" I snapped, standing up. "You really think I'm okay with my wife going on a romantic getaway with some CrossFit Romeo?" "I hoped you'd understand," she said, like I was the unreasonable one. "Love isn't finite, Aaron. I can love you both." I walked out of the office without another word and headed straight for the guest room. "Where are you going?" she called after me. "To sleep in a bed that isn't contaminated by total insanity," I shot back, grabbing my pillow. As I shut the door, I heard her mutter something about needing time to think. Oh, I was going to think all right. Just not the way she expected. Lying there, staring at the ceiling, my brain started working overtime. By morning, I had a plan. The next day, first thing, I'd start making calls, gathering supplies, building the blueprint. If Rebecca wanted to play this game, she was about to learn what honesty really looked like. Sleep never came. By 6 a.m., I was already at my shop, not fixing cars but sketching out revenge. The thing about being a mechanic, every problem has a solution as long as you've got the right tools. And I was about to assemble one hell of a toolkit. First stop? My buddy Sean's electronics store. Sean's the kind of tech wizard who could make a smartphone tap dance if he wanted to. I explained the situation, and his eyes lit up like a kid on Christmas morning. "Voice-activated recorders," he said, pulling gadgets off the shelf. They'll run for days on a single charge. And this, GPS tracker, military grade, pinpoint accuracy within 3 feet. I left the store with 3 recorders, 2 trackers, and a phone monitoring system that would make the CIA jealous. Cost me about $2,000. But considering Rebecca makes double that at her fancy CrossFit studio, I saw it as an investment in the truth. By the time I got home, Rebecca was already gone for work. Flawless timing. The first recorder was planted near the house phone. Yes, we still owned one. Rebecca's grandmother refused to even glance at a cell phone. The second recorder found its home beneath the passenger seat of Rebecca's car, tucked so deep she'd never spot it. The third? Hidden in our bedroom. Years together had taught me that nighttime whispers were when people slipped, when they revealed more than they intended. Then came the GPS trackers. One went into her gym bag, the one accessory she carried everywhere like it was glued to her hand. The other I kept ready, a backup for emergencies. Monitoring her phone was trickier, but when you're footing the bills, certain doors open. Within an hour, I had every text, call, and email mirrored onto my screen. But the real treasure? Her laptop. Rebecca was predictable. One password for everything. Our wedding date. It used to feel sentimental. Now, just pathetic. A few minutes later, I stumbled onto a hidden email account. Dozens of messages exchanged with Matthew, stretching back 3 months. They'd been plotting this little heart-to-heart with me for weeks. "We need to be careful about this," Matthew had written. "Aaron seems rational. If we handle this delicately, he might come around." Rational? I'd show them rational. Their emails laid it all bare, even their upcoming Sedona getaway. Enchantment Resort, 2 nights, this Friday and Saturday. The kind of place where one night costs more than most people make in a week. How convenient. I started making calls. My lawyer, Martin, agreed to meet the next morning. Then I rang the bank and began severing every joint account we had. By midday, the credit cards were canceled and replaced with new ones under my name. Final move? I booked a room at Enchantment Resort 2, different floor, close enough to catch every signal my devices intercepted. Rebecca wanted transparency. She was about to drown in it. When she came home that night, I barely lifted my eyes from the laptop. She tried easing into a talk about processing last night's conversation. I brushed past her, retreating to the guest room. Let her think I was wrestling with a decision. Truth was, I was watching her messages to Matthew appear on my screen in real time. Difficult, she called me in one of them. She had no idea what difficult looked like. By Wednesday, my setup was running smoother than a pro race team. Every message, every whisper, every step, documented. Even then, I decided to offer her one last shot. Not out of hope, but so she'd fully comprehend what she was about to throw away. I found her in the kitchen, prepping her perfectly portioned protein meals. The irony wasn't lost on me, meal planning while scheming a weekend with Matthew. "Got a minute?" I leaned on the counter. "We need to talk about your little proposal." Rebecca's face brightened like she'd just crushed a CrossFit competition. "Of course, I'm glad you're willing to discuss it. Before you celebrate," I said evenly, "let's clear one thing up. Is Sedona still happening this weekend?" Her smile faltered, frozen mid-expression. "How do you even know about Sedona?" "Doesn't matter how," I replied. "Answer the question." "Yes." She straightened, bracing herself as if for a heavy lift. "Matthew and I wanted to go, to explore things in a neutral space." I couldn't help but laugh. "Neutral?" "A resort charging $2,000 a night isn't neutral when Matthew is footing the bill." Her eyes widened. "You've been spying on me?" "Focus," I said, voice calm and deliberate. "This is your last chance to walk away. If you go through with it, there will be consequences. Big ones." "Are you threatening me?" she asked, hand trembling around her protein shake. "Not a threat," I whispered. "Just honesty. Isn't that what you wanted? Complete honesty?" I stepped closer, locking eyes with her. "Here's mine. If you leave for Sedona with Matthew, this marriage is finished. No second chances, no negotiation." "You're being irrational," she snapped. "This doesn't have to destroy us. Matthew understands." "Matthew understands nothing," I cut in. "And clearly neither do you. Let me make this crystal clear, for the last time. This is the breaking point, the one final chance to pull our marriage back from the edge, cancel the trip, end things with Matthew. Maybe then we can try to repair what's left." Rebecca set her half-finished protein shake on the counter, crossing her arms tightly over her chest. "I can't," she said flatly. "This is something I need to figure out on my own. If you cared about me, you'd understand. If I cared about you—" A bitter laugh escaped me as I shook my head. "I've spent 5 years proving that I do. Guess that doesn't hold up against a weekend with your gym hero." "His name is Matthew," she snapped. "Won't matter what his name is after this weekend," I muttered, turning toward the door. "I meant what I said. This is your last chance. Think hard about it." "Why can't you just talk about this openly?" she called after me. I stopped at the doorway but didn't turn around. "Why can't you just stay faithful?" That night, I locked myself in the guest room, headphones in, listening as she vented to Matthew about how unreasonable I was. 20 minutes of them mapping out their getaway, every word recorded without their knowledge. Fine. If she wanted to play this game, I had my own pieces to move. I grabbed my phone and dialed Martin, my attorney. "Start preparing everything," I said. "We'll need the papers by Friday." The next day was for tying up loose ends. Rebecca thought she had this figured out, thought she'd already won. She was about to find out how expensive honesty could be. Thursday morning came like a punch to the chest, but I was already awake before dawn. Phase 2. Sean, my friend from college, had hooked me up with something specialized, tiny wireless cameras, small enough to disappear inside a hotel room. Over the line? Maybe. But Rebecca burned that line to ashes the second she decided Matthew was worth more than 5 years of marriage. First stop, my lawyer's office. Martin didn't need me to say a word. One look at me, and he knew it was go time. I laid everything out on the table. Emails, recordings, all the proof anyone could ever need. "Damn," Martin muttered, scrolling through the files. "She really went all out this time." "You don't even know the half of it," I said, sliding over a printed hotel confirmation. "Enchantment Resort, 5 stars, on his card. Meanwhile, she's draining our joint account for smoothies." The next hour vanished in paperwork. Divorce filings, plus one brutal addition, a moral turpitude clause that would wreck her when she read it. By noon, every page was signed and ready. Back at the garage, I tied up the last of my work and told my crew I'd need Friday off. Jordan, my lead mechanic, gave me that look, the one that says everyone already knows. Small towns talk, and Rebecca's new training partner wasn't exactly subtle. The background check I'd ordered on Matthew came in. Mr. Perfect Physique? 3 failed businesses, 2 bankruptcies, and enough debt to sink a ship. Suddenly, his interest in Rebecca, or rather her recently inherited trust fund, made perfect sense. And the kicker? He already had a wife, Julia Matthews, elementary school teacher. A quick scroll through her Facebook told me she'd be very interested in hearing about her husband's weekend plans. By the time Rebecca got home around 6, she was glowing, humming to herself, packing an overnight bag like she was heading to paradise. I leaned against the doorway, watching her carefully fold the new lingerie she'd bought last week, lingerie charged to our joint credit card, a card that, as of this afternoon, was about as useful as an umbrella in a hurricane. "Going somewhere?" I asked, making her jump. "Yeah, that work retreat I mentioned," she said quickly. "Work retreat." I nodded toward the lingerie. Didn't know work retreats had a dress code. Her cheeks went crimson, but she kept folding. "It's not what you think." "No," I said coolly, "because what I think is exactly what it looks like. You're packing for a weekend with Matthew and tossing 5 years of marriage in the trash." I walked away before she could respond. Let her sit with that. Tomorrow she'd drive off to Sedona, convinced she was clever, convinced she was in control. But this game? It was just getting started. Friday morning hit, and I was electric, bone-tired but sharper than I'd ever been. My gear was packed, the hotel room prepped, GPS tracker giving me her exact location. She was at the gym, probably squeezing in one last workout with Matthew before their big escape. I parked my truck about half a block from the house and stayed put, engine off, eyes locked on the front door. From the messages I'd intercepted, Matthew was scheduled to pick her up at exactly 1 o'clock. 2 hours on the road, headed straight for Sedona. Right on cue, a shiny BMW eased into the driveway like it owned the place. Figures. The guy probably thought that least status symbol made him some kind of high roller. Then Rebecca appeared. Not dressed for a retreat, dressed like she was about to step onto a red carpet. Her hair was different, styled with more care than I'd seen in months. And that dress? Nowhere close to her usual yoga pants and hoodies. My stomach clenched as Matthew leapt out of the car, rushing to grab her bags like some knight in shining armor. If there was an award for fakest gentleman alive, he'd win it hands down. And then it happened, the moment that turned my blood to fire. Right there in the middle of the driveway, Rebecca threw her arms around him and kissed him. Not a quick peck either, one of those movie poster kisses, the kind splashed across the cover of dime store romance novels. As if that wasn't enough, she turned her head, caught sight of my truck, and smirked. Yeah, she saw me. She wanted me to see. Her way of twisting the knife, slow and deliberate. They climbed into his car, laughing like they were off to some fairy tale getaway. What they didn't realize was they were driving straight into the eye of a storm. I sat there until their taillights disappeared before heading inside. Time to start phase 1 of the plan. First order of business, locks. I'd already arranged for a locksmith, no questions asked, quick as lightning. In less than an hour, every lock in the house was replaced. Rebecca's old keys, worth about as much as a screen door on a submarine. I didn't stop there, reset the garage code, reprogrammed the security system. Let's see her face when she strolls home Sunday and can't even get through the front door. Next, I made a phone call to Julia, Matthew's wife. She answered on the third ring. That conversation, oh, it got interesting fast. Mrs. Matthews? I said evenly. We don't know each other, but we need to talk about what our spouses are doing this weekend. Silence, sharp and heavy. Then her voice cut through like shattered glass. They're what? Cold enough to freeze the Arizona desert solid. Oh, you didn't know about their romantic little getaway to Sedona? I said. Funny, my wife swore up and down you were fine with it. The line went quiet except for her breathing. Then, softly, tell me everything. We talked for half an hour straight. Turns out she'd had her suspicions but never had solid proof. By the time I was finished, she was ready to take a sledgehammer to Matthew's perfect little world. Perfect timing, too. Divorce papers would land in his lap about the same time Rebecca got hers. Once we hung up, I packed my own bag and hit the road. The enchantment resort was waiting, and I had some adjustments to make to their love nest before they checked in. One perk of being a mechanic? Slip into a maintenance uniform and no one asked questions. By the time Matthew and Rebecca arrived, I'd already been through their room and set everything up. 2 hidden cameras with flawless angles, audio sharp enough to catch a whisper. 20 minutes of work, and I was back in my own room, laptop open, watching the feed in crystal clarity. Phase 2, Operation Kill the Mood. They strutted in, smug as cats who'd raided the creamery. Champagne popped, hands wandered. Time to start ruining things. First move, a surprise couple's massage, courtesy of an anonymous benefactor. The look on Matthew's face when 2 masseuses showed up at the door? Priceless. Rebecca tried to turn them away, but they insisted. Session was prepaid and non-refundable. By the time they shut the door on them, the mood had evaporated, like trying to strike a match in a hurricane. Next, flowers. A huge bouquet of lilies, Rebecca's least favorite. Card attached. Happy anniversary, darling. Love, your husband. Matthew looked like he'd swallowed a lemon whole. And then came the pièce de résistance, a singing telegram. Full barbershop quartet, matching suits, cheesy harmonies. They burst into syrupy love ballads, every verse loudly dedicated, from a loving husband to his faithful wife. By the time the last note faded, whatever spark Matthew and Rebecca thought they had, gone. And I wasn't anywhere close to finished. From my concealed vantage point, I watched Rebecca prowl the confines of the hotel suite like a caged predator, her fury simmering in the aftermath of the latest disaster. This has Aaron written all over it, she muttered under her breath, her hands trembling with pent-up rage. But the question that gnawed at her wasn't if, it was how. How in the hell did he even find out where they were staying? Ever the peacekeeper, Matthew attempted to diffuse the tension by calling room service, convinced that a decent meal might restore some semblance of calm. Bad call, Romeo. The previous day, I'd made a few friends among the hotel staff, friends more than willing to accommodate special requests. Nothing illegal, nothing toxic, just pure chaos masquerading as hospitality. Menus scrambled, orders swapped, spices cranked to volcanic levels, fish substituted with beef, sauces no one asked for, everything subtly wrong in a way that couldn't be blamed on chance. By the third ruined delivery, Rebecca's patience detonated. "This is insane!" she shouted, flinging the menu aside. "Literally everything is going wrong!" "Oh, sweetheart," I thought, grinning at the live feed. "You're barely at the starting line. Cue the midnight encore." A thunderous knock shattered the brief silence they'd managed to find. Matthew opened the door to reveal a private investigator, my buddy Jordan in a thrift store suit, flashing a bogus badge and demanding answers about reports of suspicious activity. By the time Jordan wrapped his interrogation, any hint of romance between them was dead and buried. From my screens, I watched their argument spiral, stay and salvage the weekend, or admit defeat and leave. Pride won the vote. They weren't giving up yet. Fine by me. Round 2 was already in motion. Saturday dawned with a literal bang. At precisely 6 a.m., the construction crew I'd bribed launched emergency repairs directly above their room. Jackhammers rattled the ceiling like an earthquake. Bleary-eyed and staggering, they stumbled to breakfast, unaware I'd already flipped the switch on phase 2. Remember those delicate little lingerie pieces Rebecca had packed for their romantic getaway? A dab of pepper extract turned them into wearable nightmares. The instant she slipped one on, she clawed at her skin as though she'd fallen into a poison ivy patch. "I'm having some kind of reaction," she cried, bolting for the shower. Matthew's expression, utter perfection, confusion, panic, and complete helplessness rolled into one. But I wasn't finished, not even close. That was just the warm-up. Next came the hotel manager, phoning Matthew mid-meltdown. "Sir, we're experiencing an issue with your credit card." Watching Matthew scramble was pure entertainment. I'd tipped off his bank about suspicious activity, and they froze his account faster than ice forming on an Alaskan lake. Rebecca stepped in to help, only to discover her cards were mysteriously declining too. The manager, staying perfectly in character, threatened to involve security if the situation wasn't resolved immediately. "This is ridiculous," Matthew snapped, his suave facade cracking like brittle glass. "Don't worry," I murmured to myself. "Plenty of cash. Oh wait, that bankruptcy paperwork says otherwise." 2 agonizing hours on hold with their banks later, they'd missed their spa appointments, the hiking tour, and what little patience they had left. By the time they managed to patch things up, barely, they looked ready to strangle each other. "Let's just do dinner," Rebecca muttered wearily. "Something normal?" "Normal? That ship sailed hours ago." I'd orchestrated quite the spectacle at the restaurant. Every few minutes, a new delivery arrived. Roses, chocolates, balloons, even a singing telegram, each accompanied by increasingly intimate love notes. "To my darling wife, counting the hours till you're back in my arms." The diners around them swooned at what they thought was some grand romantic gesture. Rebecca wanted to vanish under the table. Matthew's face turned shades of red no paint company has ever catalogued. The pièce de résistance? A skywriter carving a massive heart above the resort. Rebecca plus Aaron forever. Gossip spread like wildfire, staff whispering, guests speculating. By nightfall, Rebecca's rash had worsened, Matthew's finances remained frozen, and the resort collectively believed they were either witnessing the world's most extravagant proposal or its most catastrophic breakup. Through my hidden cameras, I watched Rebecca seethe. "This can't be coincidence," she hissed. "Aaron knows. He has to know." "Impossible," Matthew insisted, though he sounded about as convincing as a turkey 2 days before Thanksgiving. If only they knew what tomorrow held. Compared to that, today was a leisurely stroll. Sunday morning, I set the stage for the finale. While they scrambled to salvage whatever scraps of romance remained, I was preparing Monday's crowning move. My lawyer friend Martin had it cued to perfection. Papers will be served right at 2 p.m., he confirmed over the phone. Smack in the middle of her advanced CrossFit class. Perfect. Couldn't have scripted it better myself. Julia's lawyer had decided the perfect place to serve Matthew was his gym, right in the middle of his workout. Couldn't have scripted it better if I'd tried. The thought alone made me laugh. Divorce papers as part of a warm-up? Now that's motivation. That morning, I reviewed the footage I'd collected from my hidden cameras. Rebecca and Matthew looked about as happy as drenched cats stuck in a storm drain. Whatever spark they'd once had, snuffed out, completely dead. But neither one of them wanted to be the first to walk away. Pride's a dangerous drug. The evidence we'd built? Rock solid, absolute gold. Every word, every argument, every miserable second was recorded crystal clear, enough to make even the most jaded family court judge sit up and take notes. When I handed it all to Julia's lawyer, the guy practically danced. "This is a guaranteed win," he told me. "Matthew won't know what hit him." By midday, I watched them on the feed as they packed their bags. Rebecca looked like she'd been dragged backward through hell. Her allergies were still tearing her apart, and Matthew's frozen credit cards hadn't magically fixed themselves. They were even begging the hotel front desk for cash just to tip housekeeping. "Maybe we should have listened to Aaron," Rebecca muttered, shoving clothes into her bag. "This whole trip's been a disaster." "You don't say, sweetheart." And the best part? The disasters weren't over yet. I had one more surprise lined up for their drive home. Every local radio station for 50 miles had been bribed to play their favorite love songs. Each one dedicated to Rebecca from her adoring husband. Cost me a fortune, but watching Matthew's face turn purple every time another song came on. Worth every penny. Back at my own hotel, I started packing up my equipment. The cameras had done their job. The proof was airtight. Martin had already filed the paperwork for Monday, and Julia's lawyer was itching to drop the bomb. "You sure you don't want them hit at the hotel?" Martin asked during our final call. I shook my head. "Nah, let them stew another night. Monday's going to feel like a freight train." Before shutting the feed for good, I gave their room one last look. They were exhausted, snapping at each other, looking like they'd aged 10 years in 2 days. Mission accomplished. Tomorrow, while they stumbled back into their routines thinking the nightmare was over, they'd find out just how wrong they were. Rebecca would be served mid-instruction at her advanced fitness class. Matthew, right in the middle of training a client. Sometimes karma needs a little nudge. I'd given it a full-on shove off a cliff. They finally pulled into my driveway around 8 o'clock Sunday night. Looking like they'd just survived a war. Rebecca was still clawing at her arms from the allergies, and Matthew's once perfect hair looked like it had lost the battle too. Karma had been working overtime this weekend. I was on the couch watching the game when Rebecca walked in. Matthew, apparently clueless, tried to follow her. "One more step and you're going to need an ambulance," I said without taking my eyes off the TV. He froze where he stood. Rebecca turned to him. "Maybe you should leave." "Yeah," I echoed, finally glancing over. "Unless you want a preview of tomorrow's main event." Matthew bolted like a cat hearing a vacuum. Rebecca crossed her arms and stared at me as his car sped down the driveway. "All right," she said, glaring. "Spit it out. That whole weekend was you, wasn't it?" "Who, me?" I grinned. "Just sitting here watching the game. Though I hear the Enchantment Resort's lovely this time of year." Her face drained of color. "How did you—" "Please, you two weren't exactly criminal masterminds. But hey, let's talk about your weekend. How was the champagne? The room service? Oh wait, credit cards didn't go through, did they?" "You had no right," she snapped. "No right?" I cut her off. "That's rich, coming from someone begging for permission. To shack up with Captain CrossFit. Speaking of rights, sit down. We need to talk about tomorrow." She blinked. "What about tomorrow?" "Well, you've got that advanced class at 2, don't you? Might want to dress nice. You're going to have company." Rebecca sank into the armchair, silent. "What are you even talking about?" "Sweetheart, divorce papers don't just materialize out of thin air. And as for your shiny new boyfriend, he's got a little surprise headed his way too. From his wife, she sends her regards." "His wife?" Rebecca's voice splintered into disbelief. "But He promised me she was fine with us. Yeah, about that, I said with a sharp, humorless laugh. Julia and I had ourselves a nice little chat. Turns out she's just as fine with it as I am. I shook my head slowly. Gotta hand it to Matthew. Takes guts to juggle two lives like that. Not brains, but guts. Rebecca's face shifted through a dozen emotions in the span of seconds. Shock, denial, anger, panic, like a soap opera playing at double speed. You're bluffing. Am I? I stepped closer, voice low and steady. Want to see the footage? The emails? The texts? I've got enough proof to bury you both deeper than 6 feet. You've been spying on us? She whispered. Call it what you want, I said. I prefer gathering facts. You were always begging for honesty, weren't you? Well, tomorrow, everybody's going to get exactly that. Her tears came then, real ones, not the rehearsed sobs she used when pleading for space to figure herself out. I made a mistake, Aaron, she said, her voice trembling. We can fix this. No, I said, my tone like ice. A mistake is burning dinner, forgetting an anniversary, booking a romantic getaway with your gym buddy and expecting my blessing. That's not a mistake. That's a decision, and decisions have consequences. What do you want me to do? She asked, barely above a whisper. Nothing, I replied flatly. There's nothing left to salvage. You made your choice the second you walked out that door with him. Tomorrow the papers will be at your sister's place. Your stuff too. I pulled her wedding ring from my pocket. The once pristine band was now bent and flattened. This, I said, holding it up, is what's left of us. Her eyes went wide. You ruined my ring? No, Rebecca, I said quietly. You ruined it. I just made it official. I turned toward my room. Oh, and don't bother stopping by after class tomorrow. The locks will be changed. Your code won't work. Better call your sister and figure out where you're staying. Aaron, please. We're done, I cut her off, shutting the door behind me. Enjoy the consequences of your honesty. Her muffled sobs filled the living room. Tomorrow was going to be chaos. But tonight I'd finally sleep, knowing I'd done what needed to be done. Monday hit like a freight train. By 1 in the afternoon, I was planted at the gym, front row seat for the carnage. Rebecca was in instructor mode, barking commands at her CrossFit crew like her whole life hadn't just gone nuclear. Matthew, across town, probably thinking he'd dodged the blast. Poor idiot. 2 o'clock sharp, Martin, my attorney's associate, walked into the gym cool as ice. Rebecca was mid-burpee demonstration when he called her name. The second her eyes landed on those papers, worth every sleepless night. Her perfect Fitspo mask cracked faster than an overbaked protein bar. What is this? She stammered. You've been served, Mrs. Thompson, Martin said evenly. Divorce papers. The gym fell dead silent. You could have heard a kettlebell drop. Then came the whispers, the phones coming out. Within seconds, the place buzzed like a hornet's nest. Across town, Matthew was getting served too. Julia's lawyer interrupting his personal training session with his most important client. Couldn't have planned it better if I tried. Correction, I did plan it better. By noon, both their phones were detonating with calls and messages. People living double lives never do well when their lies cave in. They panic, they scramble, they drown. I'd also sent the gym owner a highlight reel, carefully edited, nothing explicit, just damning enough. Rebecca's whole honesty-first brand didn't exactly align with the gym's family-friendly vibe. She was out of a job before her next class even started. Matthew? Julia didn't just file, she went nuclear. Her family's influence in the fitness industry ran deep. By sundown, Matthew's certification was under review, and his client list looked emptier than January resolutions. Rebecca blew up my phone. 50 calls, endless voicemails, walls of texts. The cycle was predictable. Rage, tears, begging, back to rage. The 5 stages of getting caught cheating, all in fast forward. The final touch? A neat little video package sent to every mutual friend and family member, tastefully edited, enough to tell the truth, not enough to get flagged as revenge porn. A week later, I sat across from Martin signing the last of the documents. Rebecca hadn't contested a single thing. She knew better. She didn't stand a chance. She'd moved in with her sister. Matthew's wife had taken him for everything, though everything wasn't much to begin with. Their little CrossFit love story? Dead on arrival. Another failed resolution destined for the trash. Martin looked up from the paperwork, shaking his head with a grin. "In all my years doing this," he said, "I've never seen anyone handle cheating the way you did." I rolled my shoulders in an easy shrug. No tension left in me. She wanted the truth. So I handed it over, unfiltered, down to the last painful detail. Hours later, the quiet of my home wrapped around me like a soft blanket. A cold beer rested in my palm as I sank into the stillness, letting it steady me. The rage that had flared earlier had burned itself out. In its place was something calmer, an unexpected sense of finality, almost relief. Rebecca had been the one chasing new dynamics in our relationship. Fine. Now she had all the space she needed to explore them, alone. As for me, I was done with the chaos. The house was mine again, my business was thriving, and next weekend I already had a date lined up with a yoga instructor who saw right through Rebecca's so-called honesty for what it really was. Revenge doesn't always come ice cold. Sometimes it's served with grace, with every receipt neatly tucked away. And karma, patient as ever, takes care of the rest.